In a world that moves fast, where people chase love as if it were a finish line, many forget that love does not grow in the noise of wanting. It blooms in the silence of being. The pursuit often becomes a distraction, an attempt to fill an emptiness, to catch what seems missing within. But true love is not something you catch. It is something that awakens naturally when peace becomes your companion. When one is constantly in pursuit, the heart becomes restless. It beats not from joy but from anxiety. A silent panic that whispers, "I must find someone to make me feel whole." But this very thought builds a wall between you and love itself, because love, in its purest form, cannot exist where there is need. It appears when there is space, when there is calm, when you no longer need it to complete you. The one who is always chasing rarely notices what already stands still before them. They seek excitement, validation, promises, things that move, things that glitter. But love is not glitter, it is soil. It does not dazzle the eye, it nourishes the roots. And to feel its depth, one must be still enough to sense its quiet presence. When you pursue, your attention is outside. You look outward, measuring, comparing, hoping. You live in expectation, not awareness. But love does not reveal itself to those who expect. It reveals itself to those who receive. And to receive, one must be at peace. Peace is not the absence of desire. It is the harmony between desire and detachment. It is the quiet knowing that what belongs to you will never have to be chased. A peaceful heart listens. It does not rush to possess. It seeks to understand. It does not demand love to appear in a certain form at a certain time. It trusts the rhythm of life. And in that trust, something beautiful begins to unfold. Because love recognizes peace, it is drawn to it. It feels safe in it. In a peaceful presence, love does not need to protect itself. It can breathe freely. Many believe love is found through passion, pursuit, and intensity. But intensity without inner stillness burns out quickly. It consumes rather than connects. It becomes a fire that destroys rather than warms. Peace, however, gives love a place to rest. It is the soft ground where two souls can meet without losing themselves. When you are peaceful within yourself, you no longer fall in love from loneliness. You fall in love from abundance. You no longer search for someone to fill your silence. You share your silence with them. You no longer seek someone to heal your pain. You invite them into your wholeness. And that changes everything. The pursuit of love often comes from fear. Fear of being alone, fear of not being enough, fear of being forgotten. But peace dissolves fear. It teaches you that love is not a reward for chasing, it is a reflection of your state of being. When your inner world is calm, your energy becomes magnetic. You no longer need to run after love. Love finds you in your stillness. Peaceful love is not lazy. It does not mean doing nothing. It means doing everything without losing presence. It means giving without needing recognition, listening without waiting to respond, caring without fear of rejection. It is not the absence of effort. It is effort guided by awareness. When a man or woman moves through life with peace, they carry a quiet power. They do not have to prove their worth. They do not have to perform to be loved. Their calmness becomes an invitation, an invisible gravity that pulls the right souls toward them. That is why love born in peace lasts longer. It is not built on the unstable ground of desire, but on the steady soil of understanding. When love is pursued with urgency, it becomes fragile. It depends on outcomes, on reciprocation, on timing. But when love is born from peace, it becomes timeless. It does not panic when distance appears. It does not break when misunderstandings arise, because peace gives love the ability to breathe, to pause, to reflect, to return. Pursuit often creates illusions. It makes one chase fantasies rather than truths. It makes one love the idea of love more than the person themselves. But peace removes illusion. It allows you to see clearly, not what you want to see, but what truly is. It allows you to love not because someone fits your expectations, but because you recognize their essence. In peace, you realize that love is not something you get, it is something you become. You become loved by the way you listen, by the way you forgive, by the way you breathe through uncertainty. You become loved by the way you stay kind when the world feels cold. And when you live in that state, you no longer need to pursue love, because you are a love. Peace transforms the energy of love. It changes its frequency from hunger to harmony. It removes the noise of wanting and replaces it with the music of gratitude. It allows love to flow naturally, without force, without fear, without resistance. And in that flow, connections deepen. Trust grows and souls find rest in each other's presence. The peace within you becomes the peace between you. When you bring calmness into a connection, you create space for the other to open. When you stop chasing, you allow both to move freely, not out of obligation, but out of genuine resonance. That is where love breathes, that is where it expands. So the secret lies not in searching harder, not in trying more, not in impressing or proving. The secret lies in learning to be at ease within your own heart, to stop running, to stop grasping, to stop fearing the silence. For it is in that silence, in that space, in that stillness where love begins to recognize you. Love is born in peace, not in pursuit. It does not need to be caught, only realized. It does not need to be earned, only allowed. And when you find that peace within yourself, every step you take becomes an expression of love itself, not a search for it. There is a part of every man that lives quietly beneath the surface, a world that few people ever see, a world built from unspoken thoughts, unhealed memories, and silent battles carried through the years. He may laugh, achieve, provide, or lead, yet deep within him there is a longing not to be praised, not to be fixed, but simply to be understood. It is in that understanding that his depth awakens, like a river that finally finds space to flow. From childhood, many men are taught to be strong, to hold their pain with dignity, to stay composed even when life tears at them. They learn early that emotion is often misunderstood as weakness. And so, they build walls, not because they want to hide, but because they have never found a space safe enough to be seen. They learn to communicate through action rather than feeling, through silence rather than expression. But beneath that silence, the heart waits patiently for understanding. To understand a man is not to interrogate him, not to demand that he explain what he cannot yet articulate. Understanding is presence, the gentle ability to listen without trying to fix, to observe without judgment, to offer warmth without conditions. When he feels this kind of presence, something within him begins to unfold. His guard, once shaped by years of survival, begins to soften. He starts to share fragments of his inner world, testing the waters of trust, sensing if his truth will be held with care or met with resistance. When he feels understood, he begins to breathe differently. His tone changes, his eyes soften, his energy settles. It is not that you have solved his pain. It is that you have allowed it to exist without shame. And this is where depth is born, not through grand gestures, but through the quiet realization that he no longer has to hide. Many people desire emotional intimacy, yet few understand that intimacy does not begin with words, it begins with feeling seen. You can speak to a man for hours and never touch his depth, but one moment of genuine understanding can reach further than 1,000 conversations. When he feels that his emotions are not being measured, analyzed, or corrected, he begins to trust the space between you. That trust is what awakens his depth. A man's depth is not something you pull out of him. It is something you create room for. It cannot be demanded because demand makes him retreat. It cannot be forced because force reminds him of every moment he was misunderstood. To awaken depth, one must learn the language of stillness, to hold the pause between his words, to sense what he means, even when he cannot say it, to honor the weight he carries without making him feel small for carrying it. When he feels understood, he begins to connect to parts of himself he had long abandoned. He starts to rediscover emotions he once buried, dreams he once silenced, tenderness he once feared. Understanding acts as a mirror. It shows him that his inner world is not too much, not too complicated, not too strange. It tells him that it is safe to feel again. Understanding is not about agreement. It is not about approving everything he says or does. It is about seeing his intention even when his expression falters. It is about recognizing that behind anger there is often pain, behind silence there is often fear, behind distance there is often exhaustion. To see through these layers is to see the truth of his humanity, and that truth is what calls his soul forward. A man's love deepens in spaces where he does not have to perform, when he feels that he can speak without being corrected, when his emotions are received with patience rather than pressure. His heart begins to trust that it is safe to expand. This trust transforms the dynamic between two souls, no longer a relationship of expectation but of reflection. He begins to meet you from his truth, not his mask. There are moments when understanding does not require words at all. It can be the quiet nod during his silence, the calm energy that says, "If I see you even when you don't speak, That unspoken empathy allows him to lower his defenses, to share without fear of being misunderstood. Because the deepest form of connection is not built through communication alone, it is built through recognition. When a man feels misunderstood, he withdraws. His silence grows heavier, his actions more distant, his emotions harder to read. It is not because he has lost love, but because he has lost safety. Safety is what gives him permission to be vulnerable. Without it, his inner world remains locked. But when he feels understood, that safety returns, and with it comes depth, openness, and the kind of intimacy that does not rely on effort. To understand him is to understand rhythm. When to listen, when to pause, when to speak. It is to realize that not every silence needs to be filled, not every wound needs to be fixed. Some wounds only need to be witnessed. And in being witnessed, they begin to heal on their own. When you meet a man from a place of peace, you create a vibration that tells him he is safe to show his real self. That vibration cannot be faked. It comes from your own inner balance. A calm energy invites honesty. A patient heart invites trust. And in that trust, the walls that once stood tall begin to fall naturally. Depth is not something that exists only in his personality. It is the reflection of how deeply he feels allowed to exist. If his emotions are dismissed, his depth goes dormant. But if his emotions are honored, even in their imperfection, his soul begins to speak more clearly. Understanding is the water that brings this depth to life. When a man feels understood, he does not need to seek validation elsewhere. He does not crave external approval because he has found resonance within the connection. He starts to communicate with more openness, to love with more softness, to live with more authenticity. The understanding he receives becomes the foundation upon which he can finally express his truth without fear of rejection. And so, depth does not awaken through intensity, through attraction, or through effort. It awakens in that subtle moment when his heart realizes it can exist fully in your presence. Without explanation, without performance, without the need to prove anything at all. There is something in the heart of a man that does not yield to perfection. He may be drawn to beauty, impressed by confidence, or inspired by charm, but none of these hold him for long. What reaches him, what disarms him, what makes him truly surrender is not perfection but presence. Presence is the quiet, grounded energy that asks for nothing and yet gives everything. It is the feeling of being met exactly where he is, without pretense, without demand, without disguise. Perfection is an illusion built by effort. It is the mask worn to be accepted, the performance meant to be admired. But presence is real. It cannot be fabricated. Presence does not strive. It simply is. And when a man encounters that energy, it unsettles him in the best possible way. It softens the parts of him that have been hardened by comparison, expectation, and the endless need to prove. He surrenders not because presence is louder or brighter, but because it is true. In a world where everyone is trying to appear as something, the simplicity of being becomes magnetic. Presence speaks in silence. It says, you don't need to perform here. You can just breathe. That permission, that unspoken allowance to exist without perfection, touches him more deeply than anything else. Perfection exhausts him. It demands he maintain a version of himself that fits the image someone else holds. It keeps him alert, cautious, aware of every flaw that might disappoint. But presence relaxes him. It lets him exhale. It reminds him that connection is not about performance. It is about recognition. When he feels recognized beyond his achievements, beyond his mistakes, beyond his appearances, he begins to trust. That trust is the beginning of surrender. Presence carries an energy that words cannot describe. It is the stillness that listens without trying to solve. It is the calm that remains steady even when emotion rises. It is the grounded awareness that holds space for imperfection without judgment. When a man encounters this, something ancient inside him awakens. His defenses, which once felt necessary, begin to dissolve. He no longer feels the urge to hide his vulnerability because he senses that it is safe to exist fully. A woman who embodies presence does not compete with perfection, she transcends it. Her power does not come from how flawless she appears, but from how real she feels. She is not trying to impress, she is simply there. Aware, steady, awake. Her gaze does not evaluate, it understands. Her silence does not punish, it invites. And in her stillness, he finds the reflection of a peace he did not know he was seeking. He surrenders because presence feels like home. It does not demand that he change. It allows him to return to himself. Every man carries within him a longing to be accepted without conditions, to be seen without correction. Perfection reminds him of everything he is not. Presence reminds him of everything he already is. The pursuit of perfection often creates distance. It builds walls of appearance, polished, impressive, but cold. It demands effort, control, constant maintenance, but presence is effortless. It flows naturally from awareness, from peace, from authenticity. And what is effortless cannot be threatened. When he senses that your energy is not competing, not comparing, not chasing, he begins to lean closer. Because presence is rare, and rarity calls to the soul. A man's surrender is not weakness, it is trust. He surrenders only when his spirit feels understood. He may be powerful, logical, composed, yet beneath all that, he is searching for rest. Rest from the noise, rest from pressure, rest from the need to perform. Presence offers that rest. It does not speak of what should be, it accepts what is. It does not rush to control, it allows what unfolds. In that allowing, he feels something sacred, peace. Perfection might inspire admiration, but presence creates devotion. Perfection may win attention, but it rarely earns trust. Because perfection is external, it is what the eyes see. Presence is internal, it is what the soul feels. When he encounters presence, he does not just see you, he feels you. He feels the steadiness of your energy, the calm in your tone, the grounded rhythm in your being. That calmness pulls him out of the chaos of his own mind. Presence is not silence for the sake of quiet, it is awareness in motion. It is the ability to stay conscious of your breath while the world rushes around you. It is the strength to stay kind when misunderstanding arises. It is the wisdom to listen without trying to win. Presence does not seek validation because it is rooted in self-understanding. It moves slowly, deliberately, confidently. And this pace, this peace, invites him to match it. He begins to surrender when he realizes he does not need to be perfect either. When your energy holds no judgment, he feels free to make mistakes, to laugh at his flaws, to be honest about his fears. Presence tells him that vulnerability will not be punished, that honesty will not be weaponized. In that realization, his heart begins to open, not through desire, but through safety. There is a quiet power in the one who is present. She becomes the mirror in which he can finally see himself clearly. Not through the distortions of ego or insecurity, but through the reflection of acceptance. That reflection calls him inward. It asks him to drop the armor he no longer needs, to stop fighting battles that no longer exist. He surrenders not to her, but to what her energy awakens within him. A sense of peace, a remembrance of authenticity. Perfection tries to control love, presence allows it to evolve. Perfection focuses on appearance, presence focuses on connection. Perfection seeks to be admired, presence seeks to understand. And in that understanding, a different kind of bond is formed, one that is not built on performance but on truth. Presence transforms the dynamic between two souls. It slows everything down. It removes the need to rush, to prove, to protect. In that slowness, depth appears. He begins to feel more, to think less, to exist more fully in the moment. That is what surrender looks like. Not giving up power, but releasing resistance. He surrenders to presence because presence is not trying to own him. It is not trying to impress or control. It gives him space to breathe, to reflect, to remember his own essence. It is through this spaciousness that love deepens, not because it demands to be noticed, but because it allows both to truly see. There is a force that pulls two people together more powerfully than desire, more quietly than words, and more deeply than charm. It is unseen, but it shapes everything between them. That force is emotional safety, the invisible gravity that holds love in place, that allows trust to grow and that gives depth to connection. Without it, even passion fades quickly. With it, even silence feels alive. Emotional safety is not something you can see, but you can feel it. It is the calm that settles over you when you realize you do not need to defend yourself. It is the peace that comes when you are heard, not judged. It is the quiet confidence of knowing that your truth will not be used against you. It is the invisible energy that makes two souls relax in each other's presence. For many men, emotional safety is the rarest gift. They have been conditioned to be strong, to stay composed, to hide pain behind laughter or silence. The world often teaches them that vulnerability is weakness, that emotion is danger, that expressing softness will cost them respect. So they build walls, thick, invisible walls, not to push others away, but to protect what they fear will not be understood. Behind those walls lives their true self, waiting for the gravity of safety to draw it out. Emotional safety is not built through promises or declarations. It is built through consistency. It is created when words align with actions, when patience replaces pressure, when understanding replaces reaction. It is built slowly, quietly, like the growth of roots beneath the surface. You may not see it happening, but when it's there, everything feels grounded. A man does not fall deeply because of how much he is desired. He falls deeply when he feels emotionally safe, when he senses that his soul is not in danger. Safety allows him to express the parts of himself that the world never asked to see. Safety allows him to reveal the emotions that logic cannot describe. When he feels that he will not be punished for being real, his heart begins to unfold naturally. The invisible gravity of emotional safety does not pull with force, it pulls with peace. It does not demand attention, it creates connection. It is the quiet pull that brings two people closer without them realizing why. It is what makes his body relax around you, what softens the tone of his voice, what slows his breath when he speaks. Because safety is not excitement, it is exhale. You can be beautiful, intelligent, magnetic, but without emotional safety, none of it will last. Beauty may draw him near, but safety makes him stay. Attraction may spark the flame, but safety keeps it from burning out. When he feels safe, his attention stops wandering. His energy stops guarding. He becomes present because presence can only exist where safety lives. Emotional safety is born from the absence of threat, but threat is not always loud. Sometimes it is subtle. Criticism disguised as advice, sarcasm hidden in affection, impatience hidden in passion. These small things remind him that he must stay alert, that he cannot relax, and when the heart cannot relax, it cannot love deeply. Love requires openness, and openness requires safety. Safety is not built by agreeing with everything he says or doing everything he wants. It is built by holding space for honesty, even when honesty is uncomfortable. It is the courage to stay calm when emotions rise, to listen without preparing to respond, to see beyond his words into what he really means. When a man feels that kind of presence, he begins to trust that he can be himself without losing your respect. There are moments when emotional safety says nothing at all. It is found in a gentle look, in the softness of tone, in the stillness of attention. It is found in the way you stay when he withdraws, not to chase him, but to remind him that he is not alone. Safety is not about solving. It is about staying. When someone stays, not to fix you, but to walk beside you, the heart remembers what home feels like. Men often test safety not consciously, but emotionally. They may go silent, they may retreat, they may pull away, not because they do not care, but because they are watching whether their absence will be met with attack or understanding. When he realizes that his silence does not cause panic, that his space is respected, that his emotions are not weapons against him, the invisible gravity deepens. He begins to orbit closer, not because he must, but because he feels drawn. Safety is what transforms love from temporary to timeless. It turns attraction into attachment, and attachment into devotion. It gives him permission to speak truths that he has never said aloud. It allows him to share fears without shame, to admit mistakes without humiliation. In that kind of space, the relationship becomes a sanctuary, not a battlefield. A woman who creates emotional safety does so not by control, but by calm. Her steadiness tells him that he does not have to hide. Her patience tells him that she will not rush his emotions. Her tone tells him that he is being heard. That is how trust is born, not through promises of forever, but through the moment-to-moment experience of peace. The invisible gravity of emotional safety is what keeps two souls connected even in distance. It is the memory of being accepted that lingers in the heart long after words fade. It is what makes him think of you not when things are easy, but when things are hard, because in your presence, he remembers what it feels like to be seen without pressure, loved without fear, and held without condition. Without safety, love becomes survival, a game of defense, a cycle of reaction. But with safety, love becomes expansion. It grows naturally, gently, without resistance. It allows two people to breathe together, to exist together, to build something that is not defined by fear of loss, but by trust in peace. The power of emotional safety lies not in what is said, but in what is felt. It is the invisible assurance that says, you can be yourself here. It is what anchors connection when everything else shifts. It is what allows the heart to remain open, even after pain, even after misunderstanding, even after silence. Emotional safety is not dramatic, but it is divine. It is not loud, but it holds everything quietly in place. It is the unseen gravity that draws him closer. Not through demand, but through peace. Attraction is often the spark that draws two people together, but it is respect that keeps them connected once the spark fades. Attraction is loud, quick, and emotional. It excites the senses and captures attention. But respect is quiet, steady, and enduring. It anchors the bond in something deeper than appearance, deeper than chemistry, deeper than momentary desire. Respect is the unseen structure beneath real love. Without it, attraction collapses into confusion. With it, even silence becomes meaningful. Respect is the bridge that allows two souls to truly meet. It is built not from passion, but from perception. The ability to see the other as a whole being, not as a possession, not as an object of need, but as a person with their own thoughts, boundaries, and essence. When there is respect, communication becomes cleaner, trust becomes stronger, and love becomes safer. Because no heart can open fully where it fears being diminished, attraction can awaken quickly, sometimes in seconds. It is born of curiosity, of energy, of chemistry. But respect grows slowly. It requires observation, patience, awareness. It asks, can I value this person even when they are not giving me what I want? Can I hold space for their truth, even when it differs from mine? That question determines the difference between temporary attachment and lasting connection. For many, the mistake lies in believing that attraction alone will sustain love. They chase the rush, the excitement, the thrill. But attraction fades with familiarity, and when it does, only respect can hold what remains. Respect is what allows two people to look at each other after years and still see something sacred. It is what transforms physical closeness into emotional intimacy. Respect is not fear, and it is not submission. It is not the act of placing someone above you, but of standing beside them with awareness. It is recognizing their individuality, their autonomy, their choices, their boundaries, and honoring them as equal in essence, even when different in form. When respect exists, there is space for disagreement without destruction, space for vulnerability without manipulation. A man may be drawn to beauty, but he stays for respect. He feels safe where his dignity is preserved. When he senses that his thoughts are heard, that his emotions are not mocked, that his effort is acknowledged, his heart naturally begins to invest more deeply. Respect tells him you matter here. Your presence is seen. Your boundaries are valued. That message is far more powerful than attraction ever could be. When respect is missing, attraction becomes unstable. It turns into a power struggle, one person trying to control, impress, or prove something to the other. It breeds insecurity and resentment. But when respect is present, love feels lighter. There is no need to prove, no urge to dominate. Both individuals can breathe within the relationship. That breathing space is what keeps love alive. Respect is also the foundation of emotional safety. It prevents cruelty from creeping into communication. It guards the relationship from silent contempt. It ensures that even in conflict, there is fairness. Two people who respect each other can disagree without losing connection. They can challenge one another without humiliation. Respect transforms tension into growth. It says, I may not agree, but I still honor who you are. Attraction often wants to possess. Respect wants to understand. Attraction wants to consume. Respect wants to connect. Attraction is focused on how the other makes you feel. Respect is focused on who the other truly is. That shift from desire to awareness is what deepens love into partnership. When you respect someone, you see beyond your own needs. You begin to value their peace, their boundaries, their evolution, not as extensions of your comfort, but as parts of their truth. Respect is a discipline. It requires awareness in moments of frustration, restraint in moments of anger, compassion in moments of misunderstanding. It is choosing to listen even when ego wants to speak. It is remembering that love is not ownership and that every soul remains free even in commitment. Without this awareness, relationships suffocate under the weight of control disguised as care. A man feels the depth of connection most when his integrity is respected, when his emotions are not dismissed as weakness, when his silence is not misinterpreted as indifference, when his presence is not taken for granted. Respect allows him to relax, to trust, to reveal his softer layers. Because where there is respect, there is no need to defend. Respect builds a bridge between two inner worlds. It allows both to cross without fear of falling. When respect is mutual, neither person has to walk on eggshells. Boundaries become clear, honesty becomes safe, and love becomes mature. Respect does not remove passion. It refines it. It transforms attraction from impulse into intention. It makes love not just about feeling good, but about doing good for each other. Many chase attraction because it feels exciting, but excitement is temporary. Respect is what gives love its rhythm, its patience, its grace. It makes space for imperfection. It allows laughter in moments of tension, forgiveness in moments of error, humility in moments of pride. It teaches that love is not a conquest, but a coexistence. Respect is quiet. It does not boast or demand recognition. It reveals itself in tone, in timing, in the way you look at someone when they speak. It shows up in the way you respond when they make a mistake. It's the silence that listens, the boundary that protects, the truth that honors. It's in the small gestures. Remembering a preference, acknowledging an effort, apologizing sincerely. Those are the building blocks of the bridge that love walks across. Without respect, attraction becomes manipulation. It turns intimacy into performance and affection into obligation. But with respect, attraction matures into reverence, a sacred kind of admiration that sees the other as whole, not as a source of pleasure, but as a mirror of truth. That is what builds a bridge that does not collapse under time or distance. Respect is the invisible structure that carries love beyond the surface. It connects emotion to integrity, passion to peace, attraction to understanding. It teaches two souls how to walk toward each other without losing themselves. It reminds them that love is not found in the perfection of the other, but in the willingness to honor their truth exactly as it is. Love often confuses people because they mistake attachment for connection and obsession for depth. They hold on, thinking that the tighter they grip, the more secure the bond becomes. But true love does not grow from holding, it grows from harmony. The secret reason why a man falls deeply in love, why two souls stay intertwined through time and distance, is not attachment, it is alignment. Attachment is fear in disguise. Alignment is freedom made visible. Attachment comes from the need to possess, to control, to secure. It is born from the insecurity that whispers, if I don't hold on, I will lose them. But alignment comes from the peace that knows if it's meant to stay, it will. Attachment feeds on fear, alignment breathes trust. One traps, the other liberates. One demands, the other invites. One takes energy, the other creates flow. When two people are aligned, their connection feels effortless. There is no constant confusion, no emotional tug of war, no exhausting guessing. Their energies move in the same rhythm. They understand each other not because they've studied each other's habits, but because they feel each other's essence. Alignment doesn't require perfection, it requires awareness. It is the harmony between values, pace, presence, and direction. Attachment, on the other hand, lives in the mind. It creates stories, expectations, rules, and fears. It makes love conditional. I'll be happy if you stay. I'll feel worthy if you choose me. I'll be safe if you love me back. But the moment love becomes conditional, it loses its purity. Attachment tries to force connection. Alignment allows it to flow naturally. A man does not fall deeply because someone clings to him. He falls deeply because something in her energy matches his truth. Alignment does not beg, it resonates. It's not loud, not desperate, not dramatic. It's quiet but powerful, like two frequencies finding each other through stillness. He feels drawn to her not because she fills his emptiness, but because she mirrors his growth. Alignment is when both people can exist as themselves. No masks, no manipulation, no emotional games. They do not need to chase or pull. They simply fit. Not because they're identical, but because they're in rhythm. They don't drain each other, they expand each other. They don't control, they complement. That is the beauty of alignment. It allows both souls to rise without resistance. Attachment comes from scarcity. It says, there isn't enough love, so I must hold on tightly. But alignment comes from abundance. It says, there's so much love here, I don't need to force it. When you are aligned, you trust that connection will unfold exactly as it should. You don't chase, you attract. You don't demand, you receive. Attachment is noisy. It constantly questions, worries, overanalyzes. It lives in the fear of loss. But alignment is quiet. It lives in understanding. It does not need to be validated every day because it moves from an inner knowing. You simply feel when something is right, not because it excites you, but because it settles you. That feeling of peace is the truest sign of alignment. In attachment, Love becomes a transaction, giving to get, staying to avoid loneliness, pleasing to be accepted. But in alignment, love becomes a reflection. You give because you overflow, not because you lack. You stay because it feels right, not because you fear being left. You express because it's natural, not because you seek reassurance. When a man meets a woman whose energy aligns with his growth, something in him shifts. He feels understood without having to explain. He feels motivated without being pressured. He feels free, but still connected. This balance between freedom and closeness is what he truly craves. It is not the attachment that makes him fall. It is the space that allows him to expand. Alignment teaches that love is not about possession, but resonance. It is not about keeping someone beside you, but walking beside them on the same path. It is knowing that two whole beings can meet without losing their individuality. Attachment tries to merge identities. Alignment allows two truths to coexist in harmony. Attachment often leads to control. It fears change because change threatens stability. But alignment welcomes evolution. It allows both individuals to grow, to shift, to transform without fear that love will disappear. In alignment, growth does not separate, it strengthens. Because the connection is not built on sameness, but on shared expansion. A man falls deeper when he senses that he is not being held by attachment, but by trust. When he feels that he is loved without being caged, supported without being smothered, desired without being demanded, that energy is rare, and that rarity awakens his devotion. He knows he is free to leave, but he chooses to stay. He knows he is not controlled, but he feels committed. That choice, not compulsion, is what makes love real. Alignment is the invisible thread that keeps love flowing even when distance appears. It doesn't panic when things change. It doesn't collapse under misunderstanding. It breathes through patience, adjusts through awareness, and endures through faith. Attachment panics when love feels uncertain. Alignment listens and waits. Alignment also begins with the self. Before two souls can align with each other, each must align within. You cannot create harmony with another if you are in conflict with yourself. You cannot meet someone in truth if you are hiding behind your own fears. When you are internally aligned, your mind calm, your emotions balanced, your heart open, you attract someone who matches that frequency. Because love meets you at your level of peace. Attachment chases love from emptiness. Alignment meets love from wholeness. Attachment says, "Oh, I need you to make me feel enough." Alignment says, I am enough, and so are you. One creates dependency, the other creates partnership. When love comes from alignment, it doesn't cling, it coexists. It allows both to be free and still connected, independent yet intertwined. Alignment feels like flow. Conversations unfold naturally. Energy feels balanced. Silence feels comfortable. There's no need to perform or hide. Each moment feels alive because both are present, not anxious. You can sense when something is aligned. It's not forced, not confusing, not unstable. It simply is. That is why alignment is the secret reason love deepens. It doesn't seek to complete, but to accompany. It doesn't hold on from fear, but from faith. It moves not in the name of control, but in the rhythm of trust. When two people align, their connection becomes more than emotion. It becomes a reflection of peace, a mirror of growth, an energy that does not need attachment to stay.